This one's gonna have some energy to it. I can already feel it. I'm gonna have to turn the gain down on my mic because I can already tell this video is gonna get me riled. You know, a couple of months ago, I made a video about Mandalorian Season 3's trailer on our sister channel Scoop Hash, feeling like where I kind of said that it felt like it was just a rehash of old ideas, that it was an inconsistent looking mess where, once again, nothing good was going to happen, and everything that did happen was going to be so incoherent, and I was so insistent that I actually realized I have no idea what the point was to this season.
No.
What do you mean, no?
No.
No, but seriously, what the fuck was the writing and storytelling team in this season doing?
Daddy, chill.
We accomplished absolutely nothing, and we're currently more than 12 hours deep into a story that I genuinely do not understand the purpose of.
Come! What the hell is even that?
This wouldn't be a problem if this series would make up its mind about what it really wants to be. Does it want to be a random collection of adventures between Grogu, Din, and Bo-Katan? Does it want to be a serialized story where each episode furthers the conflicts and ups the stakes? Does it want to be like Season 5 of X-Files where they had a bunch of random bullshit to spice up the runtime because they weren't really sure about where they wanted to take the characters?
Characteristically exuberant.
Hope you brought your cowboy boots.
You want us to go to Dallas?
Yeehaw!
I have no idea, because I don't believe the showrunners in this case knew any better than we do. I mean, Season 5 of X-Files was a mess, but we still had like that baller vampire episode, you know what I mean?
Is there any sign of...
2 small puncture wounds on the neck?
That's not what I was gonna ask.
Too bad, we got him. Check it out.
Season 3 of Mandalorian does everything worse than previous seasons have, and in many instances bears more in resemblance to the Book of Boba Fett in terms of excitement, action, and blandness than it does to its own namesake.
Like a panther. Yes.
The only time the show manages to feel even remotely interested in regaling us with an epic tale of a Mandalorian is when it just rips off the slow, ponderous pace of Andor with its 3rd episode, which, while it has a few interesting things to say, it manages to completely waste all that potential while also being so out of place. I swear I was watching the middle act of Book of Boba Fett all over again, where Mandalorian took over for like 3 straight episodes, except for this time it was just the reverse with new characters. See, Andor kind of earned the pace and the tone that it set, but in Mandalorian Season 3 it feels so woefully underbaked and completely unnecessary, and I'm getting ahead of myself. You know, this season may have sucked. But you know what doesn't suck? This community. I don't care how small we are or how big we become, you guys are incredible. If you're new to this channel, be sure to subscribe, be sure to like the video, and be sure to stay tuned for more content coming down the pipeline very soon. Clearly, I'm not much of a fan of this season, and while I don't usually enjoy to say I told you so, boy oh boy. In the first season of Mandalorian, I mentioned that it felt like this series didn't have much in terms of an identity because up until the final 3 episodes, it just felt like a random amalgamation of Din Djarin and Grogu going to and fro from location to location encountering wacky creatures. Honestly, it was a lot like Season 2 of The Clone Wars, where it was just a whole lot of anthology episodes that had cool moments but paled in comparison to the near future storytelling and pacing of Season 3 onward. Except whereas I can give The Clone Wars a bit of a break because not only was it an animated series that started out as geared towards kids, it is also an intentional anthology up until like around Season 4, I believe, and even then a lot of the episodes are still anthological. Mandalorian is not. It takes place in sequential times at progressive moments, all within the same self-contained characters of Din Djarin and Grogu. So yes, while the first season was frustrating and clearly unable to really commit, it did make up for it by ending on a note that seemed to indicate a desire to grow beyond these pacing constraints and win back audiences with a more focused and consistent second season that would take us further into a galaxy far, far away to new and alien locations with new characters to love and explore. Instead, what we ended up getting was more of the same and a frustrating doubling down on what was already the weakest part of the series: inability to commit to long-term storytelling and infuriating insistences on remaining ambiguous for the sake of being mysterious and cool. Plus, it then had the balls to take us back to Tatooine in what is becoming a constant trend of making the most uninteresting place in Star Wars a focal point of major story arcs. And I am sick and tired of seeing this sand-encrusted shit pile. Like, does Disney own like a continent's worth of the Sahara Desert or something? Like, is there some secret Disney World resort where like famous pet celebrities go to like crush some Arnold Palmers and laugh at the common man in like a lounge chair by an Oasis pool that we don't know about? What the fuck am I talking about here? This is such a niche bit to go off on, and I am just wasting my breath. So who is Grogu? Who is Din Djarin? Does he get punished for removing his helmet? Yeah, I mean, in Book of Boba Fett he does, but not in his own show. I mean, what became of side characters like Cara Dune, Bo-Katan, or Moff Gideon? Don't know, because Cara Dune got bitch slapped with the firmly soft lubridermed hand of left-leaning political bodies of the board of directors at Disney. Bo-Katan had her whole arc involving a fucking army of Mandalorians just, you know, fucking off and jerking off into her authority and starting a Mercs for Hire business on Jack Black's private Tenacious D concert space take place entirely off-screen in between the events of Season 2, Book of Boba Fett, and Season 3.
When I returned without the Darksaber, my forces melted away,
Where is the stolen fleet?
making their way through the galaxy as mercenaries.
Moff Gideon is practically unseen, practically unheard, and no more of a threat in Season 3 than he was in Season 1. If anything, he is less of a threat. Hell, he doesn't even make a physical appearance until the last 2 episodes, wherein he barely does anything. It's like the writers looked at Season 1, they saw what didn't really work, then they looked at Season 2 and they went, I don't think it was beneficial to have a main villain. What if the villain of this season was an underwater dragon, an above ground dragon, neither of which they fight, by the way, some pirates that are led by Davy Jones' vegan cousin, Christopher Lloyd's animated corpse, and Brie Larson's AI curated brunette. And not a single person in that meeting said, what the fuck is the matter with you? Like, on that note, where is Thrawn? He's been hyped up and mentioned for about 2 straight years now, and homeboy isn't like Thanos in the books. He should have already been here. I get that he's the villain for Ahsoka, but if that's the case, then don't even mention him. If you're not going to deliver on it in any way, and you're just going to waste our time with these random insert scenes of like the fat bitch X-Wing pilot going off and being like, oh hey, look, this could be Thrawn. You're like, fucking okay, then show him. Like, I'm getting off track again. Let's talk about the story of Season 3. And by that, I mean to say, let's attempt to talk about what happened in Season 3. And by the way, if you know what happened, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, because I've now seen the season twice all the way through, and I am no less confused and annoyed by the unfolding events in this universe. Now, the first episode picks up sometime relatively soon after the events of the Book of Boba Fett. At least I'm assuming that's the case, because Din is now on his official time to return to Mandalore and find the ancient waters underneath the city and reaffirm my status as a true Mandalorian so Mommy Armorer will stop bullying me, ooh. And here I was thinking 2 things to myself over the course of that episode. Firstly, we already established this train of thought and plot commitment in the 3 random episodes in Book of Boba Fett, so why are we re-establishing it right now? Oh, wait, is it because you realize that requiring people to watch a separate series that has absolutely nothing to do with the core story of Mandalorian was a really stupid idea, and that everyone involved in the pacing and writing of that idea should be fucking fired and never work in the industry again?
Wait a minute. I know what's going on here. You've all become idiots.
Because that is what you should have realized. Or is it the second option, that you came to realize that half-assing a Star Wars property featuring immensely popular fan-favorite characters from canon and then bastardizing them to fit a poorly drawn-out and uninteresting premise was a moronic thing to do? Because it's not like you've already done that 3 times before, am I right?
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Way to stay original, Disney. Now, the second thing going through my head watching the pilot was that if this was the core story for Season 3 and it was just a collection of events as Din and Grogu explore a derelict city, an abandoned planet, they come across the occasional pirate or a lone Mandalorian who refused to give up the fight, then I was all for it. Even if the setup wasn't great, the concept was intriguing. That sounds like it could potentially come off as too slow and ponderous for a series that's pretty predicated on action and exploration, but compared to what we got, I don't think there would have been nearly as many complaints as I'm seeing right now. Right after that first episode, Mandalorian is already back up to its old tricks, venturing off the pathway to explore meandering side plots with poorly choreographed and forced action sequences featuring side characters who have nothing interesting to say or do, and they end up being relegated to plots of such little significance that we might as well have just left them out of this season altogether.
It's so sad Steve Jobs died of ligma.
Who the hell is Steve Jobs?
Ligma balls.
The ensuing next 4 episodes are completely pointless, and I really do mean completely pointless. Episode 3 to episode 6, you can completely skip. and you will still understand season 3. We end up going to Coruscant, where we desperately watched the Mandalorian team try to recreate the cold and commanding feel of Andor. You know, without realizing that Andor took place several decades prior to this series, so it kind of felt more tonally appropriate. I mean, they then try to gather the Mandalorians under Bo-Katan one more time, but they can't until they complete yet another side quest, and at this point in the season, I really just completely tuned out my first time watching it. They kept moving the finish line every single episode. But whereas in some series that kind of tends to feel a little bit more earned and tends to increase the tension and the story, in the case of Mandalorian Season 3, it just serves to increase the runtime of a series that has nothing in its stomach, yet somehow manages to feel both gaseous and bloated at the same time. If I were to really narrow down my frustration with this season's story, it'd come down to two things. Once again, Din does not feel like the main character. He feels like a side thought to a series that has prided itself on treating Pascal as the leading man. But in season 1, he barely felt like he belonged. In season 2, he shared most of the big moments alongside Dune, Boba, and Gideon at pretty much every single turn. And here in season 3, it might as well be called Bo-Katan, a Mandalorian's story, because the entire plot for this whole season revolved more around her struggles and attempts to become the new leader of Mandalore, and constantly saving Din's ass that it comes off as so one note. This is not a joke, by the way, I genuinely had to rewind multiple times to see if I was even watching anything in the right sequence. I would like walk away and go get like a drink of water and come back, and I would just like, my brain was like, these scenes do not connect. What is happening? Look, I love Katie Sackhoff. She was absolutely iconic to my childhood back when Battlestar Galactica was a thing. But why is she the main character in a series that's not about her? And for that matter, why even bother with side characters like Greef Karga, Moff Gideon, or Grogu if you're barely going to commit to them being in any way influential to the story while doing nothing to further their own respective importance? Karga is a cool character, or was a cool character, but we learned nothing new about him in 3 seasons, and now he's kind of just story fodder. Grogu is arguably the most mysterious and interesting part of this whole thing, but we've still barely learned anything, and his story has been so infuriating in its execution that I feel like it's completely past its prime by now. It's long past the gestation of what made it intriguing, and the piecemeal execution of the little tidbits we have gotten are so minor it would have been better to have just left him on Luke's planet and just forgotten that he exists. We've now seen the same flashback about Order 66 twice. I mean, except this time we got to see Ahmed Best saving his ass because, I guess we needed to move things forward just slightly, and I mean, hey, those overpriced Lego sets ain't gonna sell themselves, boys. Okay, seriously though, why is the Razor Crest set so fucking expensive? Like, it is not that good of a set. Like, fuck out of here with that triple-digit asking price. Now, the second thing that has really turned me off of this series has got to be the gradual degradation in the action, whether that be in the cinematography, the pacing, the choreography, the logical issues, the near constant desire to fill runtime with cameos, etc., etc. So let's talk about that. Mandalorian, when it first started, garnered a lot of praise from people, both consumers and critics alike, for its more hard-hitting action scenes in comparison to the movies that had preceded it. The usage of practical stunts, actors performing their own stunts when they're able, and the renewed insistence of longer takes, wider shots, and deeper focusing of the lens. What I say to you is this: what fucking show were you watching if that was your take? There are some fun and admittedly cool action scenes. I'm actually going to say this real quick, but I tried not to talk too much about the last episode because I don't want to spoil it, because I know there are still fans of The Mandalorian, so I tried not to really include the last episode too much in this script. I will give credit where it's due. The fight between Din Djarin and the jetpack troopers in the ray shield room was fucking awesome. Everything else in the last episode was shit in terms of action, so we're not even going to talk about it because someone else will already break it down better than I have. Probably Samwise Gamgee. That guy does awesome breakdowns of Star Wars content. Where was I? Yeah, there are some fun and admittedly cool action scenes. The final fight between Moff Gideon and Din Djarin is well choreographed while still being horribly paced. The jailbreak fight in season 1 where Jaren goes off to rescue Grogu from the scientist is tightly paced and intense while using good ambient lighting to ratchet up the intensity between gunfights. I know some people like to say that Luke's fight against the Death Troopers is kind of epic, and I suppose in a way it kind of is, but to me it was kind of just like eye candy for like 10 straight minutes, and personally I didn't really care for that. It was fine, but it wasn't my thing. I mean, probably the best of all of them in terms of like this season's action scenes was Boba Fett's fight against the Stormtrooper battalion in season 2. Like, I have no idea where all the energy and violence in that scene went because we never see it again in Book of Boba Fett or in season 3 of Mandalorian. The problem with the Mandalorian's action scenes is that their desire to reach very often exceeds their grasp. Or in Disney's case, they kind of like pull their hand back when they realize how hard and time consuming and expensive it is to shoot a really good action scene and to maintain quality. Or really just how hard it is to make a decently paced and well-told narrative story in general. And like I said, logic has been completely thrown out the window. I mean, in the first episode, Grogu is threatened by some stupid cave creature fucktard rejected art Team Goonies character, and instead of, sealing himself in his little pod that's been shown to be pretty damn durable, he just kind of like, runs away with all the speed and assurance as that retarded scooter chase from Book of Boba Fett, despite the fact that later in the season he uses the Force to such a, easily accessible degree that he fucking stops like a bomb from killing them, or whatever it was. I don't remember. Or how about when Mando falls into the subterranean lake on Mandalore, and despite the fact that the cliff face appears to be pretty damn gradual, and he's only been in the water for like 10 seconds before Bo-Katan jumps in after him, and he's fallen like several dozen, if not hundreds of meters into the depths. That is not how this fucking works. I do not know who wrote this, but they do not understand basic physics.
Stop acting so stupid!
How about when the Empire Loyalists lie in wait for Bo-Katan and Din to come back to her home planet to stage an ambush, but they only send like 4 or 5 fighters, despite showing that a few minutes later that, an entire fucking squadron was just lying in wait and then allows them to jump to Coruscant. Was this supposed to be some cool moment where the audience went like, oh no, Bo-Katan's palace on the cliff has been destroyed and now she won't get her epic Elsa moment? I don't know, man. I think the exiled Duchess of Mandalore just needs to let it go. Fuck you. Mandalorian kind of desperately wants to be John Wick.
Yeah.
You don't believe me? Let me ask you this. In previous Star Wars entries, be it Clone Wars, the OG, companion games, or comics, do you ever recall Beskar armor being able to take the assload of punishment like it does in this series? Mando is effectively a walking tank who can wade into gunfire with nary a worry, just turning his body slightly to cover vulnerable areas or to deflect a blaster bolt in a different direction to mitigate its impact on the body. Exactly like John Wick did, well before it, and around the same years where John Wick has been dominating the conversation around how to shoot well-made action scenes. This isn't even mentioning the fact that this Beskar plot armor is only effective when it's convenient to the characters. It's been able to deflect a fucking darksaber, turrets, blasters, and staffs, but apparently some vibroblade shit from the future worst fight scene extras in The Last Jedi can get ya. Sometimes even just a single blaster shot can tank a Beskar plate and turn it into packing peanuts. While at other times, it'll deflect anything and everything. Logic be damned. You can take the body armor conversation and turn it into a conversation about longer takes and practical stunts performed by actors, but I mean, if they're gonna copy from the best, why does this look so much worse than this? Easy, because the crew on Wick knew what had to be involved, while Disney and Jon Favreau just want to capitalize on trends and plagiarize their betters. Don't get it twisted, I love Pedro Pascal, but by his own admission, he can barely see anything while he's in costume, and he does enjoy doing some of his own stunts when he feels he can physically manage it, but in stark comparison, Keanu Reeves, who's almost 20 years older than him, dedicated to training for months on end for individual fight scenes across multiple films where he did all of his own stunts, all of his own fight choreography, and all of his own gunfighting and driving. He pretty much pulled a Tom Cruise and dedicated himself to proving that he could do it, and he delivered in spades, getting better and better with each film despite advancing in age and body. Pascal just didn't dedicate to that level, and neither did anyone else on the set of Mandalorian from the looks of it. So if you're gonna use longer takes, better focusing, and limited stunt teams, then you need to reevaluate how exactly you're going to choreograph them, because you're just shooting yourself in the foot when people start analyzing your fight scenes and coming to the same conclusion that most of us already have. It's cool once, And then anytime you rewatch it, you kind of realize that, oh, these all actually kind of suck. I mean, you don't even need to jump universes and production studios to see the issues with Mandalorian's action scenes. Just look at the prequels. The CGI is legible, the lighting is consistent, and when the fight scenes between dueling lightsabers, blasters, or chasing is happening, it's all being done by the people on screen, with like a few exceptions like Christopher Lee or Yoda who had to be CG'd. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen are actually moving this fast. They trained for months on end to learn how to accomplish these incredible feats with nothing more than hand-eye coordination and consistent practice movesets.
How can you do this? This is outrageous. It's unfair.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're thinking. Some people don't like how overtly choreographed it is, and they would have preferred something a little bit more raw, which is what we got in the sequel trilogy, but I honestly think that's kind of more subjective than it is anything else. Now let's look at the gunfight in the Mines of Mandalore as an example, where jet troopers and Mandalorians alike make a shit ton of mistakes, leave themselves completely open to gunfire, and allow themselves to be captured and led into traps like it's their first battle ever. Also, Din can have this epic mono-a-mono fight with Gus Fring that feels like it was ripped straight from Rise of Skywalker.
Whose idea was this?
Like, why did Paz close the door from the side that had the enemies on it? Like, like just walk to the other side of the door and close it, bro. They weren't advancing. Like, I mean, whatever. He gets this cool fight scene, I guess. I mean, some of the stormtroopers were they'll just like float straight into the gunfire with like their arms outstretched, like their choreographers and CG artists have a bigger Jesus complex than Zack Snyder. Others are just blindly firing at nothing because the CG team and storyboards couldn't be arsed to do an overhead shot or a wide establishing shot showing both groups in their entirety fighting each other. And instead of cutting open the door to help Din from being captured, Bo-Katan just kind of stands there and goes, no, and runs away to cut a hole in the other door that leads the opposite direction.
That doesn't make sense.
Which then directly leads to the death of Paz Vizsla, so it kind of feels like you're just a really bad leader, Bo-Katan. Like, why are you being chosen to lead again? Oh, right, it's because the armorer is sus or whatever. That's the current theory, even though she's done like fucking nothing to be suspect, but... Speaking of lacking an original spine on which to hang the cumbersome weight of the Mandalorian armor on, this series desperately wants to be Andor without committing to, any of what made Andor so outrageously good. Oh, they emulate it. You get to see Coruscant and some attempts at good writing, but while this may be a sincere form of flattery to some, to the more discerning, it is aught else but a flattering attempt to be more interesting than it thinks it is, and try as hard as it can to think for itself, like a senior year series should be capable of doing. Its room temperature IQ is given away by terrible CGI, lazy as hell writing, mediocre acting, and some truly awful art direction. Like, why do senators in this episode look like Dr. Seuss's forgotten cocaine nightmares? Like, I need to be several shots deep to consider this even close to the level that Andor achieved. And even then, I'd probably be closer to alcohol poisoning than I would be to accepting this hack as little more than a pathetic wannabe. Why did they allow Brie Larson's stunt double in here, who's still undergoing amnesty rehabilitation, by the way? Like, why did they allow her to be in charge of the other Imperial rehab prisoner? I mean, sure, they may not have known for sure she'd murk him, but it's still a moronic move. Like, do security cameras not exist at this point in the timeline? They do, but do they not want us to remember that? Another logical loophole that you'll need Olympic-level steroid thighs to jump through. Apparently there's a technology that can override ship controls and take them on a designated pathway. So like, why isn't every single fucking capital ship in the military using that technology to completely turn the tides of battles?
Why the hell didn't you tell me that from the beginning?
I mean, I guess that doesn't matter, because this way we can get the cameos from Bowser and Rizzo that we all desperately wanted in our lives, apparently. By the way, this particular thing that I'm complaining about is potentially the worst episode in the season, and that is a pretty big margin. The story is so forgettable, I still don't know what the point of that whole meander even was. Meander? Meandor? Mandalorian. Oh, that's good. I'm going to use that. Mandalorian. This isn't to say there isn't something to enjoy here in Season 3. It's just that it's so unsure of itself and so underconfident that it comes off as amateurish and mediocre. It's like a bunch of kids who learned how to use the Unreal Engine in Blender, and then they freaked out when they realized that motion capture required actual effort. It's just sad to see how far Star Wars has fallen, honestly. Especially when there's still good shit happening, like Andor or Bad Batch, and the upcoming Fallen Jedi Survivor game, which, to be fair, we don't know if it's going to be good, but it's a safe bet. So almost 30 minutes later, and season 3 is still more or less a massive shit show. Even after getting everything out of my system, I hate it even more. Like, I fucking love Jack Black, but what did they do to this man? Between Salacious D-Flat and Mezzo Miss Nothing at the Buffet, this series is quickly becoming a poster child for random celebrity cameos that no one could care less about. I mean, if the cameos were well acted and consistently contributing to an interesting plot, I could forgive the atrocious inaccuracy of what Disney hoped to achieve by supplying boomers with some dopamine and millennials with a soy jack expression because Irma Gerd is Lizzo wowie zowie, and as Christopher Lloyd tries his damnedest to Back to the Future so far up Disney's ass so it could become relevant again, viewers are treated to one uninteresting side quest and fetch quest after another while Katie Sackhoff and Pedro Pascal just get their lats swoller than Dwayne Johnson carrying this fucking series on their back. But instead, they end up just walking away crippled and emasculated to an embarrassing degree.
Exsanguinations? Of whom?
How does that grab you?
It's a
Dead cow. Exactly.
It isn't like season 1 where a weak story was saved by some cool action scenes, fun little mysteries to chew on, and world building that felt like it belonged in the grander Star Wars universe. It isn't quite as good as season 2 either, where weak side plots ended up being important to a cool finale that set up the stakes for what was to come without sacrificing an emotional core that felt like it tied the strings on Grogu and Din parting pretty neatly, only to bring Grogu back like less than a season later because we can't get rid of the profit machine. This season's finale was so mediocre, backed by some of the worst episodes and laziest moments in Star Wars history, that at times makes Book of Boba Fett look like Renaissance art in comparison. There's nothing to chew on here. At least, nothing that tastes good. We already know Thrawn is coming, so that mystery and intrigue is gone. We didn't get enough Moff Gideon for him to feel like a viable threat anymore, so that's gone. Bo-Katan effectively went nowhere in her story, despite taking up most of this season's focus, so that's gone. Din is still exactly where he was at the beginning of season 1. He essentially went full circle back to being a soy boy Mandalorian wannabe, and Grogu is so casually tossed aside, I found myself reminded of how shitty of a character he even is, assuming it's even a he. And even if all that wasn't bad enough, the rest of what's on offer is just outrageously boring. The cinematography and art direction is completely uninspired. The music is so forgettable this time around. Oh, speaking of music, what happened behind the scenes with Ludwig Göransson? Because if you're still composing these tracks, you have fallen off the wagon, my friend, and you need to climb back on. And whatever producers are overseeing the edits for this series, stop playing the Mando stinger every single time he does something quote cool or something quote tense happens.
This blade was taken from me. Bo-Katan rescued me and slayed my captor. She defeated the enemy that defeated me.
Never shut the fuck up! You never shut up!
It is so annoying. Just stop it. Stop it. Where was I? Oh yes, boring. You know what else is boring? The action scenes. The shitty attempts at making a meme template instead of, you know, furthering the narrative. The side plots of Andor but the Bush Light equivalent. The droids have an uprising, but not like a big one, that's too much work. We have an intern that wants to be a puppeteer, so here's some shitty Grogu flips. Or who can forget the best side plot of all time, Din Djarin's bathwater. Let's go, boys and girls, we got him. I really do wish I had nicer things to say about this series, but it shat on that goodwill and then smushed it into the carpet in the living room before turning around, taking a giant whiz all over its own face while begging you to go give it a big old bear hug and to please buy its merchandise. Or literally do anything else, like go watch Andor. Or rewatch Andor. Or watch anything else, really, ever. This is not the one, and this is not the way.
Before fractured and shattered our people. Go home.
Lick my balls.